But I do have a guest this morning, which you don't have to listen to me till 9 o'clock. And here is my guest, and she's a familiar face, too. Dr. Rachel Francis from, thank you, from the Marion Animal Hospital. I feel like we're like friends now, you know? I see you here, and I practically live at the Marion Animal Hospital with Marley. But I was very glad that Marley didn't need to have surgery on Friday, because I didn't sleep on Thursday night, just worrying about Friday. But anyway, that's Marley, you know? You know how Marley is. That's my pug.
How's she doing?
She's doing okay. I'm waiting for that thing to clear up on her leg. Every day I check it. Let me see.
No, I know how you feel. My dog's limping right now.
Oh, is she?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So I have to take him to a veterinarian because I don't like to work on him. He's 13.
Oh, yeah.
So that's tomorrow.
See that? See that? we all face those things. So, anyway, she did get treats,
Yeah?
and she got to play around
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. She got
She
to ride in
seems
the
to be
car.
much more relaxed than she used to be. I think it's from living with you. She seems to be very at home.
She is at home, but she's very attached to me.
Right.
Very attached. And she doesn't like me to move out of the chair when she's in my lap. You know, we do a lot of screaming and hollering.
Oh.
See, I gotta move. So she hears that word, and then it's the screaming and hollering. The only time she jumps off my lap is when a dog appears on the TV.
Oh, cute.
She still goes crazy over that. And anything she hears on the street. Nobody should go down the street.
Okay.
Not cars, not people, not cats, not other dogs. No one is allowed on the street.
I mean, that's not a bad quality.
It isn't. You call it a quality?
No, in a dog. I mean,
Yeah.
having them for an alarm or,
Yeah.
to let people know.
Okay, so that's enough of Marley. Now, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we had been, I don't know, I had been going back and forth in my mind a couple things. I don't know, I feel like all I've been talking about lately is food.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've talked about it a couple times on the show, but it seems to be a never-ending topic with clients and with pet owners. So we could definitely look at that again. I just put up a new blog on our website about grain-free foods and are they healthier?
Yes.
And it's something that I talk to clients about all the time because they come in and, boy, they're spending an arm and a leg for these really expensive dog foods. And, when we're looking at foods and how they're made and the cost of things and is it actually better for your dog, this is the question I always get, well, what is the best food for my dog? And unfortunately, it's kind of the way nutrition is for humans, too. It's not an exact science, and what is good for me may not be the best for your daily meals. But there are some minimum requirements that animals need to get, just like people need to get. Like, we need a certain amount of protein, we need a certain amount of carbohydrates, and we need a certain amount of fat in our diets. But that percentage changes depending on the species. So, for instance, if you and I eat steak every day, the percentage of fat in steak is, upwards of 24% fat. So we'd have to be really, really frugal with the fat the rest of the day in order to not exceed our daily recommendations for fat.
Yeah.
So you can eat steak every day. You just have to manage the rest of your diet so that it doesn't exceed it. So when you're looking at the foods, you kind of have to keep those in mind. And when I was doing some research for this, I had some very interesting conversations with some other veterinarians. I've been emailing a veterinarian, I don't know if people have heard of him, Dr. Ernie Ward, and he's on TV a lot, and he has some very strong opinions about food. And one of his points he made to me that I really liked, he said, when you're looking at the way food is evaluated on independent websites or by, the government looked at McDonald's and they scientifically evaluated McDonald's and found it to be healthy. So when you're looking at nutrition, you need to take everything with a grain of salt.
Steve is laughing on that one, huh?
And I mean, to be fair to McDonald's, the FDA found it healthy as a part of a larger meal plan. So to be fair to McDonald's, they didn't say that you can just eat McDonald's and you can be fine. If you're eating this amount of fat as a part of a regular meal plan, then yeah, you can call it healthy as part of a meal plan. But in and of itself, it's,
Not the place you want to go every day.
Right, but that was his point. You can probably find evidence for any kind of diet. I know Atkins' diet was like this huge thing for a long time, and then, we've just realized that amount of fat in our foods is going to kill your heart. I mean, it's just going to, you're going to be chock full of fat and plaque and on your arteries, and so I don't know. I think it goes back and forth, and you always hear things. And the pet food market is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yes.
And it's very crowded. It's a very crowded market. So in order for pet foods to stand out, they tend to promote, particular things about their foods, like grain-free is one of the big things that people like to hear about. So I thought maybe we could talk about that.
Yes, well, grain-free almost sounds like with humans staying fat-free to a certain point for your diet, to not have an overabundance of fat. Now, is that in the same category as grain-free, or
I don't know. I feel like
is grain-free that great?
So when you're looking at, dogs are different than cats. So I guess we could probably look at dogs first. Sorry, cat people. Cats always get the... Well, let's do cats first then, okay? So
Okay.
Cats, I always feel like cats are the second-class citizens. So cats, when you're looking at cats, cats are in a group of mammals called carnivores and they're actually so extreme that they're called obligate carnivores. So they actually cannot survive on vegetable sources of protein. Unlike dogs. Dogs can actually live on soy. They can actually eat a vegetarian diet and live. Cats will die. So cats need a certain amount of protein every day. Now, when you put protein into a food, your fat goes up.
Yes.
It is unavoidable, unless you're using vegetarian sources of protein, which cats can't eat. So protein, when you're looking at fat, protein and fat go hand in hand. Okay, now you're exactly right that what you're talking, I think what you're getting confused on with grain-free is low carbohydrates. Mm-hmm. So low carbs make sense in some situations, but carbohydrates naturally are fat-free.
Okay.
So when you're removing carbohydrates, or when you're removing grains from a diet, you do have to use another source of carbohydrates. And often it ends up being potatoes, tapioca, and percentage-wise, the sugars in those sources of carbohydrates is almost 5 times what it is in wheat, corn, barley, oats. Those are very, they have low glycemic indexes and they have low fat. So for cats, when you're looking at grain-free for cats, it's really not much of a difference because they're usually on a high-protein diet anyway. So when you're removing grains, you're not removing a whole lot of the diet. You're maybe putting some peas in, or you're putting in some potato or whatever. And cats usually it's a little bit different. Dogs, however, dogs don't have the protein requirements that cats require, and they are very susceptible to being overweight, and they just they tend to way overeat. Cats can too, but so when you're looking at dogs, it's a little bit of a different ball game. usually what I find with these foods that are considered grain-free, usually people are switching to them because the dog has some kind of underlying problem, like they're itchy, or they have a rash, or they have chronic ear infections, or they have like really bad gas all the time, or there's something underlying going on that they're trying to fix, and they're kind of thinking it of as well, you know, lower carbohydrates. But grain-free does not mean lower carbohydrates, and I think that's a big I think that's a promotion of the pet food industry. When you're looking at grain-free, it doesn't mean that there's less sugar in the diet.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So when you're looking at it, it's the carbohydrates are the same, and a lot of times the fat content's a lot higher. So you're exactly right. Where you're looking at grain-free, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be healthier, this is going to make me slimmer, this is grain-free. Usually it's not the case. When you're making these diets, when you're decreasing the grains, you usually are increasing the protein, and you're also usually way increasing the calories overall per cup. So the grain-free diets have a place. I mean, grain allergies are fairly uncommon. Usually we see allergies. The most common grain allergy is a wheat allergy. So when you're looking at grains, wheat is the only one to really avoid if you think your dog has a food allergy.
Okay.
Corn allergies are extremely rare. So the other thing that happens when you remove grains from diets is that the price way goes up. They become very expensive. Mm-hmm. It's very expensive to make a grain-free diet.
And it doesn't necessarily mean it's, excuse me, the best for your pet.
I have patients who do well on grain-free diets, but I would say the majority of my patients don't do as well. The calories, they tend to gain weight. They tend to have stomach problems because there's not as much fiber in those grain-free diets. So dogs really need that fiber. Cats need the fiber too, but cats are a little bit different. Go ahead.
Well, I remember when I was in there with Marley a couple of weeks ago, we had a discussion about food. And I tried a different food for a while. I was not happy with it. I told you about that. I told you I wasn't happy with it. And so the next time I came in, because I'm telling you, I lived there. And so I come in and I tell Dr. Francis I wasn't happy with it. I went back to what she had before. And now it's only been 2 weeks, okay? And she's, oh, no wonder she looks so fat. That's what she said to me. That was the first thing she said to me. And I knew it wasn't true. It's just, that's the way it was. But, yeah, there was something on Facebook, I don't know if it was you who put it on, about that poor dog that was like...
Yeah, that was one of our clients posted that.
It was unbelievable how... And the poor people, the elderly couple that had that dog, kept forgetting they were feeding, and the poor thing couldn't even move.
Yes.
And went on a certain kind of diet and is doing much better.
Much better, yep.
So it's very very interesting.
It's
you think you're doing something healthy, and you're not. That's...
Well, then this information could change too. I mean,
yeah.
The government puts out different information for us all the time. But the conversation, it's interesting that you brought up your point about not liking the food, because food is a very touchy subject. So a lot of veterinarians, what we are is equally confused most of the time by food. And the marketing that is put out to clients and to pet owners, it's just as intensive to veterinarians about what foods to promote for our patients. So a lot of times I'll have clients who say, I asked my vet what to feed, and he said, I don't know. I have no idea what you should feed. And I feel like, we're really struggling to come up with a reasonable recommendation for clients. And the bottom line is that there isn't a perfect diet for your food. So if for me to say to you, you got to feed this particular brand, it's going to work every time, that's not realistic.
No.
Or for you to say, or to hear from your groomer, you've got to try this grain-free diet, it's going to fix all your problems. That, you got to take that with a grain of salt. I mean, so if patients come in, and basically what I base it on is we look at the dog or the cat. So if the cat is, eyes are clear, the coat is shiny, the weight is good, not overweight, bowel movements are regular, there's no problems with itching, that diet's fine.
Right.
Stay with that food. Why would I change that?
That's
the
correct.
animal's doing well. But if there are other problems like not using the litter box, having accidents around the house, with urinating or having bowel movements, having a lot of shedding with cats especially can be food related.
Really?
Yes,
Shedding?
definitely. Too thin or too heavy. Then we need to take a look at the nutrition and take a look at it. So I think it's something to have. And then the other thing too is I find that people like to, when people come in and look for, they basically are looking for an endorsement that what they're feeding is the right food from their veterinarian. And you're going, now what do you think about this Taste of the Wild? It's pretty good stuff, right? I'm paying an arm and a leg for it,
Yes.
And so, most of us are saying, well, it's probably okay. But what we really should be doing is going a little bit further and asking your doctor what she's feeding her dog, because that would give you a little bit more clue about, where you're going with that. Most of us just don't like to have that conversation because of this, because we're afraid you're not going to like the food. Food is just, if you don't like the food, then you're not going to feed it. So we don't want to recommend something. This is, let me tell you a story. So when I was first pregnant, I have had the same obstetrician since I was 19. I went to him. I was pregnant. I was 30. And he said to me, okay, you're taking your multivitamins, right? Okay, great. What are you eating? And I was like, oh, I eat pretty well. He's like, no, I can tell, you're not overweight, but, what are you eating, to feed this baby? And I'm like, well, I eat a lot of frozen foods. And he said, well, frozen foods can be healthy, so what exactly are you eating? And I was like, well, I eat a lot of frozen pizza. And he went,
What?
you can't eat that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's got protein, it's got carbohydrates, it's delicious. I pop it in the oven. And I just poo-pooed him for the first visit, okay? The next visit, same thing. Are you eating frozen pizza still? And it took him, I would say, 3 or 4 visits to convince me that that was not the way I should go. And he's like, you're a doctor, aren't you? You should not be eating frozen pizza. So even, I think food, once we get it in our mind of what's okay, so then I started using a frozen food alternative that is fresh frozen foods. But it took him 3 times. So a lot of times this conversation with owners, it takes a few times, So I may have you try a different food in the future that, may work better and Marley may like. And so
Marley loves food. Put it in a dish, she's going to eat it. But her biggest love, and I am really careful with that, is her pepperoni. Oh, man.
now that's a very good point.
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm talking
She only
about.
gets 1 a day. 1.
So that's
Never
what I'm talking
again
about.
anymore.
So so you're asking me, so you come to me and you say, okay, doc, I hear what you're saying. Maybe this Blue Buffalo isn't the right food for my dog. What do you recommend? And I'm saying, well, how about something lower in sodium, lower in protein, and maybe a dry food that's better for the teeth. And you're feeding a canned food that's high in protein and high in sodium. That's like going from cheese fries to plain baked potato with nothing on it. And so usually what we experience is the dogs or the cat going, nah. I want the other one. And because we're pet owners, we go, oh, he doesn't like it. Oh, I'm not going to fight with him. You're going to go on food strike. So I think another big challenge is switching from, I'm not going to say not healthy foods, but foods that are higher in salt especially, or higher in protein. Protein and salt are palatable, especially to people too, bacon bits thinking of in particular?
Well, I know that with the pepperoni, she just has to have that one in the morning. And I will put her food down, and she'll start eating it. But as soon as I go over to get my coffee, she watches and waits for me to open up the cabinet so that the pepperoni comes out of the jar. And I got that, and I pick up the newspaper, and she's like a bat. She flies into the living room and can't wait to get into my, and if I'm not walking fast enough, this is the funny part, you know, like I'm hesitating over the coffee or something, she flies back to make sure I'm heading that way, you know. And this goes on, and I almost say to her, "You're like a bird," you know. She flits back and forth until she can get in my lap and eat that pepperoni. And even if she's left her food, she will finish. She knows, last piece, off she goes to finish her food. But she will stop eating her food. She doesn't care what kind of food she's got out there. That pepperoni takes place.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing she's really so wacky over.
The reason that
But-
she likes the pepperoni is because it's high in protein and high in salt.
Yeah.
And possibly, too, because it's a treat in your lap. I'm thinking there's some kind of
Well, I don't.
emotional connection there, too.
Well, you think so? Well, maybe.
Maybe you could feed her food in your lap and see what happens.
No, I mean, come on. She'll
Oh,
be
God.
attached to my hip as
Right.
it is. But yes, food now.
So-
I don't know. I mean, I remember my previous pet, Shadow. When I first got him as a puppy, I asked the people in the place that I had gotten him what they were feeding him. And they said they were giving him part of a can of food and mixed it with some dry food. And so that's what I fed him. But as he got older, and I started to add something to that, and he would get chicken breasts. I cooked chicken breasts for him,
Very common
and
for owners to add things to the meals like that.
yeah, and so I used to.
I don't know. You
used
really
to
like
buy
to see them go for that food. It's just very satisfying for us.
Yes, and what I would do is I would buy the family pack of chicken breasts. I bought the chicken breasts without the bones because I didn't want the work of pulling the chicken off the breasts. And I would cook them a certain way with nothing on them, and then I would freeze them and take a half one out or at a time and cut it up small and put it with his dry food and his canned food. Because before having him, somewhere along the line, there was a rumor going around that dry food was not good for the animal, that you had to add something to it. And if you didn't, if you just bought the dry food, add water to make it a little gravy, like I remember
That's
Gravy
great for the chicken
Train.
industry, huh?
I just,
No, I think that it's
do you remember when they were saying that
No.
dry food was no good for your
I don't
animal?
know. I hear everything all the time. It's one of those things where when you're looking at it, if you're hearing it from, I mean, there's a couple of reliable sources, but it's really the USDA that regulates pet food. So, I mean, I think maybe when you're looking at the chicken breast, it's like, well, why didn't you get like the giblets or like the liver or something like the other byproducts? Why weren't you feeding Shadow the other parts of the chicken? Why were you doing
Never
just
thought
the
of it.
chicken breast?
I just didn't think of it.
Well, also, I think that byproducts are vilified too.
Yeah.
So when people say, or when people look at a dog food label, and these dog food labels are half the marketing. it's one of those things where if you're looking at the label and the first ingredient isn't meat, we've been trained to think that that's not a healthy food. Or if you see byproducts on there.
Yes.
Byproducts are something
Yes,
that
we have been told that.
are vilified.
And that's not true.
Well, byproducts, by definition of our slaughterhouses and our government, are anything other than the choice meat.
Okay.
So, and it absolutely excludes intestinal matter. Okay, so the inside of intestines is not byproduct. Okay, and anything that's fur, hooves, feathers, anything that's external on the animal is not byproduct.
Okay.
Byproducts are liver, the other organs that in generally have more iron, more nutrients, process easier, are easier to digest. I mean, the choice meats for Americans are the red or white meat, depending on the animal. But the rest of the world, besides us, byproducts are often the delicacies, depending on, I mean, I don't eat them, but that's just because I'm an American. So when you're looking at the byproduct label, if you're using a main label, like if you're using a brand that you recognize, they have very strict manufacturing protocols. They're not, I read online from my research, one lady was worried that they were sweeping nails and hooves and fur into the food, and that was like a rumor she'd heard. And that is completely against the regulations. And so for the smaller companies, they're just not as checked as much, but the larger companies have regular oversight. I think the bigger the company, the more oversight they have, for how they slaughter and how they make the foods and how they process. And so byproducts, if you're just going to use that chicken breast, boy, that's going to be an expensive food. If there aren't byproducts in your food, that is very expensive. You're throwing away 70% of the animal. Mm-hmm. So again, another way to increase cost and marketing to the consumer that probably isn't necessary. I mean, when you're looking at nutritional content, byproducts lower the fat and increase the nutrients of foods.
So if you've got a novice person out there who's never really had an animal, gets an animal, and doesn't know what kind of food,
This is the conversation I love to have, because usually they're getting advice from their sister. Oh, 1 minute. Okay. The groomer, their best friend.
So is it wise?
You got to go grain-free, this is what we feed or whatever. I think having the conversation with the veterinarian is a good way to start.
Start with the vet.
Start with the vet.
Because you have to go to the vet anyway to have your animal checked.
Yep.
And when you go in there to have your animal checked or need any vaccinations or whatever, ask the vet.
And if she says, I don't know, you ask her what she's feeding her dog or cat.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope all of this was helpful with this conversation. We had a lot of conversation about food today.
There's a blog on my website if people want to find out more about grain-free diets. It's an alternative, but it may not be the right thing for your pet. And you can also email me with any questions.
Okay. All right. So, it for today.